Hello, everybody. Welcome to the electorate. What am I calling it? What is it?
It's a good show. So what the way I've tried to position it is I don't want it to be like this is the electorate, because that's something in itself, right? The
Yeah,
electorate are its own kind of beast. So I emphasize the E. So
yeah,
it's the e-lectorate
yeah,
project specifically. So if you'd have had a look at our project website, there's loads of information on there about what it is we're doing, our research paper. So there's two elements to this. There's the e-lectorate project, which is a project that's designed to see whether democracy can be improved through the use of social networking technology. And then you've got the e-lectorate platform, which is the product of the project. And that's what you can download from the App Store and got on the web and all that good stuff there. So yeah, there are sort of two vehicles for this. One is the theoretical research element of it, and then there's the actual thing itself that people participate on. But yeah, I always refer it to as the e-lectorate project or the e-lectorate platform. So if we're doing this as a project as a whole, it's probably good to talk about the e-lectorate project, and then
sure.
we'll talk about the app within there as well.
So I'd like to welcome everybody to the electorate podcast. This is the story of its beginnings and ongoing and updates. So you can follow all changes, updates, discoveries that are made from my good friend, Joseph Gaunt. Welcome to the electorate podcast, which is essentially your journey. It's your story. It's a passion project that you've begun to essentially change things and possibly for the better. So, welcome, Joseph. Thank you for joining me. Can you tell me what is electorate exactly?
Yeah, certainly happy to be here. Thanks very much, James. Um, so starting in the beginning, this is an idea I've had for about a decade, I would say. So it came from a deep realization that the way democracy is run, particularly within the UK, um, is not as efficient as it potentially could be. And the efficiency piece is quite important because being a student of politics and studying it in my college A level, my teacher kind of planted the seed of and then taught me about direct democracy as a concept, and this was sort of where the early stages of democracy began in ancient Greece, where people who were eligible to vote and decide on issues were able to meet in a square, and everyone had a say who about what decisions were taken and where things went. Um, and you could do it back then because you weren't running a huge empire or country. It was very kind of local and jurisdictional, and admittedly there were some groups of people that couldn't vote and couldn't participate. You had to be like a landowner and male, I believe, was the criteria. but but the concept of that everyone has a say really struck a chord with me, and then I compared that to how we run society and democracies today. And we don't have that same level of direct participation as the ancient Athenians do, and the main reason for that is it would be a logistical impossibility to get everyone's view on everything. So we elect representatives to represent our interests on our behalf, and that allows everyone else to go about doing what they do, safe in the knowledge that these elected representatives are acting in the national interest and in the interest of the people they represent. And I think that's fine for hundreds of years, millennia, however long it's been since the ancient Greek times. But then if you look at where we are today with technology and the things we can do with technology, and particularly social networking, and how much information we can transfer and transmit and measure and monitor, that concept of direct democracy becomes a bit more realistic and a bit more achievable, because you can get hundreds, thousands, potentially even millions of people contributing on a platform to say, I believe in this. And that's really good for democracy because your elected representatives are representing the people. The people are telling those elected representatives what it is exactly they think and they feel. And then those elected representatives can go and implement that. And I think over particularly the past couple of years in UK politics, there's been a sense of people being disconnected from that democratic process. And if you think about what has happened and what people's views on what have happened are, there's probably lots of scenarios where we've got into situations where the elected representative, the MP, hasn't followed what their constituents are saying. If their constituents were unhappy with, for example, the Boris Johnson government, and wanted their MP to vote against some of his very specific policies, and the MP didn't do that, then how is that elected representative represented their constituents and the electorate at large? So what the e-lectorate project is, to bring it back to what it actually is we're talking about, is a research initiative to see if we can leverage social networking technology to improve our democracy, and to see if we can get to a point of a more direct democracy, not to overhaul massively what the UK democracy is at the moment, because the system of elected representatives, it can be very successful, but to see if we could hold those elected representatives a bit more to account, that give the elected representatives the tools that they need to understand how the what the mood music is for the people they're representing, and so they can better represent them in Parliament, in the House of Commons, in the House of Lords, throughout our legislative function. So the e-lectorate project is the research project designed to see if we can do this. And then what we've built is the e-lectorate platform. And the e-lectorate platform is a web application which is specifically designed to be a social network about politics and government and all the stuff that some people find very interesting. Some people aren't kind of interested in it at all. But it's designed to be that hub of political conversation and democratic voice. And the reason why we've done it is because we don't think there is anything out there at the moment that compares. So when we were doing some market analysis, we were looked at your major platforms, your Facebooks, your Twitters, your more niche platforms like Parler and the Matt Hancock application that exists as well. And we were taking a look at that, and we were thinking, well, you take Facebook and Twitter, they don't really have a democratic aim of we are representing the people. Yes, people talk about politics on there. UK government's public policy announcements happen on Twitter, which again, it's not something I think is the right thing to do, but it does happen. So what we've got is platforms that aren't designed to represent people, representing people, and with that, these are commercial organizations that are trying to grow revenue and monetize their database and do all these things, and fair play to them. They've got to make money somehow, but it's not well equipped, in our opinion, to be a tool for democratic good. And it skews US as well, and you've got kind of a foreign entity getting involved in UK politics, which is always not necessarily a bad situation, but a tricky situation to be in. And then you've got the likes of Parler and the Matt Hancock application, which are very specific to conservative voices. So more liberal, more socialist voices won't necessarily get the same level of exposure or have the same interaction with those apps. So it's not truly representative of the electorate at large. So the electorate project is this web application that is designed to be politically neutral and totally independent. It's designed to be a tool that people can use to get involved in politics at a local, national, or international level. They can voice their concerns, they can talk about what's going on in their constituency, they can create petitions, they can debate and vote on issues that matter to them, they can use it as a tool to express themselves and their own political voice, get interactions, and kind of judge the mood as well. So we're in what I would describe as the almost embryonic stages of the research project. So where we are today is we've got this web application that's been built. We've got our research thesis, and we have an MVP of our product. So for those in the tech world, you kind of understand that as a minimum viable product, which is in kind of a layman's terms, the minimum capable product that we could produce, which would start to test the research theory and provide us some insights there. So what we've done is we've released an extremely buggy application for some initial user testing, just to get a feel for how it will work and how it could potentially work at scale, and that is the basis on kind of what we're building the next steps on, which this podcast series is going to start to document.
So actually, we're saying it's so close to the most recent history. It's within the last couple of weeks, if not the last week, when you have launched your MVP of the product and the web application. You're literally at the beginning stages of this enormous journey of discovery. And one thing I really loved about what you said there was being able to give MPs and representatives the mood music of their electorate through the e-lectorate platform, and so everybody has a say. It can be localized, and you almost get to a point where you have a visibility of some true sort of democracy. Although we've often seen that sometimes putting the question to the public hasn't necessarily gone the right way if they have the overall ability to sway an opinion or a decision. More specifically, let's take, I don't know where you sit on the Brexit debate and other things that happened over recent months and years, as we are in 2022, where we have had 3 prime ministers in the space of a few months. So, where is this likely to take us? I mean, where do you want to take us? What is the ambition behind what is effectively an incredibly ambitious project that you're setting up here?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Just to touch on what you spoke about at the first side of things, we are right at the beginning. We kind of kicked off the research project in earnest in October 2022. We got accepted to the App Store on Christmas Eve, and now we're on the 31st of January. So we were as early as you can come with these types of things. And to the point around ambition and where we want to be, we have some lofty ambitions for the project. I think the political neutrality point is so key for me that as much as it is my platform, I don't want to post myself politically charged content, which, as the creator of the platform, could mean it could skew in one political direction. So I do exercise a little bit of restraint, or will try to, but naturally I'm a stakeholder in this democracy, the same as everyone else. So to silence one person's views wouldn't be in keeping with the theme of the project and the ambition of the research project at large. And what that ambition is we want to become we want the platform to become this single source for engagement in politics and democracy within the UK. And what that means is we want to be the number one source for going for polling, debating, voting. We want to have major political parties on board as well, and we would want them to prioritize posting content on the e-lectorate platform rather than Twitter and Facebook and their usual channels. So yeah, we want to be the source for public sector engagement and holding these electoral representatives and the institutions that we have in society to account. So that's where we want to be. we have to balance that with what's the cost of that, and we are not a research project with an infinite amount of resources, so we are constantly looking for funding through various different means, applying for grants, or we sell our own NFT artwork on the project website, so people can support us by purchasing that, or providing donations on the project website as well. So we do want to look at things like revenue generation, but the e-lecturate platform is not really designed to be a commercial initiative, because as soon as we start entering that territory, where we get to is how do we leverage our platform to make money? And the main way that social networking companies, and near enough any company who operates in the internet space does that, is through exploiting the data that their user base generates. And we recognize that a lot of the data that we are going to generate will be particularly sensitive, that it would be very problematic if we started saying, okay, well, because you lean more socialist or liberal or fascist, we would then exploit that for commercial gain. But we have to be a little bit realistic about what we can do. So there's a huge ethical consideration of how far we can go. We've also got to balance, what do people actually want from this as well. This might be a great idea in my head, but does it work? Are people going to be very resistant to it? And we're not going to give, at least initially, the same level of exposure that these politicians will get on platforms like Twitter and Facebook. So there's a bit of a trade-off, but the summary is we want to be the #1 democratic engagement online platform that exists in the UK.
So the #1 democratic engagement platform that exists in the UK. And I want to go back to something that you mentioned, which I think is something close to my heart as well, is actually having an educated electorate. So the people that do vote and have the ability to do so are educated enough on what is actually going on at the time it's going on. And I often feel that, current media outlets, they focus on, well, what's the sensationalist? What's the thing that's going to get clicks and views and watch time and headspace and mind share and all those other wonderful terms. But there's something special about the e-lectorate platform itself, which is the ability to get access to information you wouldn't necessarily know where to get that information. And could you tell me a bit more about that? Because for me, that's what really makes this quite a special platform.
Yeah, in terms of things like where you get information from in the informed electorate, I think that's something I'm quite passionate about as well. We want information to come from the source. When you look at the media, right, this kind of big word, you've got huge media conglomerate, and then you've got the kind of little individual, and they all make up the media at large. When you pass information through one of those organizations, it's like putting light through a prism. And you don't quite know what you're going to get out of it. You could get an extreme hardline and sometimes extremist point of view, or you could get a very, very liberal point of view, and it depends on where you get your news and your information from. And what we're trying to do is give people the tools to make their mind up for themselves. So instead of a news presenter or host or journalist saying someone has said this and this means that, people can go to the e-lectorate platform and see, okay, the Department for International Trade is saying this, I think from that this and this, and therefore I will object to this, support that, vote this way on this particular topic. So what we're trying to do is remove that middle man, middle woman, middle person that exists, and give people the information to make up their own minds. We don't think that exists at the moment, but we also don't think that people know just how much the public sector does. And so we're trying to give everyone in the public sector that platform to say, look at all the great work we're doing. We're doing it for these great reasons. And I think the more informed your electorate are, the more logical your voting outcome is, and the better your democracy is. So I think you raised a point around people with huge political sway, and it's not uncommon for a government to propose a policy that on at face value everyone would reject and think, why on earth are you doing this? But it is then for that politician, that group of politicians, to then convince the public that it is the right thing to do. So again, you called out Brexit. Brexit's a really good example. Some politicians said we should leave the European Union, and then it was up for politicians on both sides to say these are the reasons why we should, and on the other side, these are the reasons why we shouldn't, and for the informed electorate to make up their mind. Now, I think what you got from the Brexit debate was lots of information filtered through multiple middle people. Okay, whereas we would like to think if that Brexit debate happened on the electorate platform, we could find the relevant information, help people find the relevant information. We could foster a culture of debate. We could identify misinformation and potentially disprove it with enough facts. I would say that on the misinformation point, we as a research project won't want to get involved in mediating what is the right information, what isn't. We would like people to make that choice and that decision up for themselves. But in the modern kind of online safety environment that we're in, we recognize that there is a need for curating potentially harmful content, but we want to stay a little bit removed from that as possible. Anyway, slight sidetrack, but the point is that where would you go today to try and be informed about a political movement or policy decision making type thing? You'd have to go to multiple sources. You'd have to go to maybe the politician who's promoting it, if they've got a website or their Twitter feed or their Facebook page, or maybe some public resources, and you'd have to digest a lot of information. Whereas we want to condense that and make that information transmission a lot easier, quicker, more efficient, and people can get to what their ultimate decision making point is quicker using the e-lectorate platform than they would do today, where there is nothing in terms of centralized information.
So it kind of brings up many very culturally relevant things in my mind, especially considering kind of timely rather than culturally. We're currently in December 2022, almost the second winter of discontent, with multiple protests and strikes going on throughout many different sectors, and a lot about pay, lots about kind of information flow, who knows what and who is mediating what decisions are being made, where are you getting that information, again, how are you finding this out. There is almost a saturation, and a real saturation point of, well, it's kind of too much, so I can only take in so much. So I'm just going to rely on the outlets that I know, maybe traditional social media, and kind of news outlets like anything from CNN to BBC to Sky News and all the others out there. So it's kind of a, well, wouldn't it be the specific place of, yes, awareness, a single source of truth for people as well? And you've kind of touched on all of those points. And I guess I'd like to just take a look at the whole idea of, well, how does this help? How will this actually kind of assist people? Why would people want to be on this sort of platform? And kind of think through the basics of, it gives me more information, I can see what other people are thinking, those kinds of things. But how does it give you a voice, an individual voice, and kind of having some skin in the game yourself?
Yeah, so a really good point. I think the one thing that we will struggle with for the research project and the platform for a fairly long time is legitimacy, because we need uptake, and we need people to believe that the stuff that they post on the platform is going somewhere. A collection of people saying this is the right or the wrong thing to do, it is far better. But what you need on the other end of that is a listening ear from your politicians to say, yeah, I hear you and I recognize what you're saying, and therefore I'm going to implement it. So what we need as a platform, and for the research project to be successful, is politicians on board using their profiles and putting out information and being receptive to the information they come back. So what we've actually done is we've created a profile for every member of parliament on the platform already, which is ready for them to just take over. And the difference between the profiles we've created and what you might see on something like Twitter is that the profile page is for the MP. Now, regardless of the name of the person that is voted in to represent that constituency, that page and that profile will always exist. Whereas with something like Twitter, what you've got is the profiles are associated to an individual. So if the MP suddenly disappears, well, there's no continuity, there's no link between their previous decisions and their previous discussions with the kind of the next step and the next person to go along. So to go back to the point of kind of engagement and legitimacy, because we have already created the politician profile pages, and because we will never delete them, they will never go, it's up for the politician to say, I want to take ownership of this, or not. And if they don't, we're not going to post anything on their behalf. We're not going to impersonate them in any way. We will just kind of let it be. But for the politicians that are able to engage, I think there would be better, more well-rounded politicians, because there'll be better representatives because they actually know what the people they're representing actually want. But we do need them to come on board. So we've got a bit of a plan and a strategy about how we will engage with them. And how we would tell them that this thing exists and we'd like them to come on board, but we need them to reciprocate that as well. So yeah, I think long term what we might consider doing is like integrating their profiles with the way that they vote in Parliament. All this information is quite publicly accessible. So if we don't get politicians on board, the only thing that we might do is just pull feeds from their Parliament records of the way they voted. That's not impersonation. That's actual fact on what they've done. But it would be far better for us if they take ownership themselves and really drive the conversation, because I think it would be problematic if there was a politician out there that doesn't want to engage with the public and particularly the people they represent. And why would you not be posting all over your constituency page about all the latest things that are going on and replying back to comments about what people are saying? I think those politicians are not going to survive the 21st century on sort of what's left of it. But I would say that because I'm a self-interested person and want everyone else on to use our platform. But we need them to engage, and if they don't engage, if they don't take their ownership of their product, of their profile, then we're not going to survive. I don't think this is going to be a very short research project.
So what I really like here is this sort of visibility that you're providing, and ease of access to that visibility, that because we often get a viewpoint of a macro scale, this is what's going on with the country, and then you're now providing a more micro granular visibility of, well, what is going on in my constituency, what are the things that I actually care about, and what is my politician voting on, and how do I know? Because you often see things like Question Time where it's thrown like a political tennis match of, well, you voted this and you voted that, and you only really know about the ways the MPs have voted because it's used in this sort of debating tennis matches. Whereas if the possibility of seeing how your MP voted, and it's something very, very close to your heart, aren't you more likely then to be swayed by, wait a minute, I don't think I agree with that. I'm going to change my mind on something. And if there are multiple votes in a certain way, then I'm going to have an opinion on that MP, and then maybe change my opinion on the way I vote and how I want my locality run. So it becomes more of a way of decentralizing decision making, and having more control over your own personal space. I think, so I think there's all these possibilities and thoughts are coming up around the e-lectorate platform that you're allowing for. So I'm going to bring it to a close, but with a final question, and that is, well, where are you and what's the next steps? What are we going to be hearing from the e-lectorate project next?
So where are we? We have very recently joined the App Store and the developer communities on the Apple App Store and Google Play. We have some basic UAT testing happening at the moment. So people testing the platform, finding all the bugs. It's incredibly buggy.
Testing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we've got a small group of really close friends and family for me, who are testing the platform. We are then starting to reach out to certain groups to see if it's something they also want to get involved in. So lots of kind of democracy promotion groups, and charities, and our next steps are really to gain more exposure and have a wider pool of people testing what's effectively a beta version of the product. So we'll continue with that for, I think, the next week or two. It's really important to me to iron out as many of the bugs as possible before we reach out to the politicians and political institutions to say this exists. We want you to own your profile, and we would want to explore with Parliament what we can integrate with their existing digital technologies and the existing information that they push out there. So at some point in the very near future, I would say within a month or two, we will be sending letters and emails out to politicians, institutions, local councils, public sector bodies to say this thing exists. It exists because of this research project. Will you help come on board and prove out the theory? And then once we do that, we will do some serious promotion, maybe in news outlets and more exposure, and kind of more people talking about the platform and talking about the research project. So we're hoping for a bit of a snowball effect, but I think the key thing for us would be, once we reach out to these politicians, public sector organizations, we will probably get a mixture of, I hope people coming on board, but maybe some cease and desists and a few other things to maybe scare us off. But I think the thing that I would want to get across is, we won't go anywhere unless we are, dragged and really forced to. The whole point of the project and the platform is to be that centre for democracy within the UK, and I don't think that there is, from what I've seen, a legal challenge to doing what we're doing. So we will continue on. We will continue promoting. We will continue engaging with politicians. And if you're watching, listening to this podcast, and you think you want to get involved, then by all means, download the app, create an account, write to your MP, tell them to own their profile, and let's see how far this thing goes, because it could potentially be huge. And people getting in now, creating accounts, you're really getting on the ground floor, and helping us shape the product to what it could eventually be. So yeah, short summary is we're going for bug fixes, wider promotion, reaching out to those institutions, and seeing where it goes.
Fab. Well, this has been episode 1 of the e-lectorate Story podcast. Thank you so much, Joseph, and speak to you next time.
Amazing. Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone.